of the meeting. And now I've just added an item to the agenda under Standing Order 6.12 so that it's not calling for a resolution, decision or recommendation, but I just thought with everything that was going on that it would be useful to have a presentation on the flood event as it has affected Canterbury and Christchurch. Kia ora. Thank you, Mary.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to give this presentation. I've brought the team along who actually did all the work preparing and over the weekend do that. We are just going to very quickly walk through the flood event, looking at giving a quick sit-rep, then walking through what we did to prepare, how we responded, and then talk about the resilience of the network and critical factors. We won't be talking to every slide because there's limited time, but the slides are there on the hub just so you've got more information than we're actually giving you. There will actually be a full report after the event that you will get later, so a lot of that detail will come later in that report. So just in terms of the event, won't talk too much about this. I'm sure everybody's seen the reports about it, but just the highlights is that we did get early warning on Monday the 24th, which enabled us and the region to start monitoring what was happening and plan for it. The event really escalated over the weekend, as you would see, and on Sunday the Mayor, as the chair for the Joint Committee, declared a state of emergency across the Canterbury region. This is the area we're looking at, and that just shows a map of the territorial authority area, and you'll know which areas particularly were worst affected by this. This slide just gives a snapshot of really the impacts across Canterbury, with particular focus on those other TAs, which is where there was significant flooding. And again, I won't go into the details of that because that's been reported quite widely on the report, on the news report. But one of the key things to note, and you'll be aware of, is the widespread infrastructure damage, particularly across the sort of lifelines, the roads, the bridges, private property across, particularly those rural TAs, and that a number were doing some significant evacuations over the weekend, and now they are in recovery and moving into recovery mode as well as response mode, and starting to plan that longer term work with, again, the emphasis on the lifelines. So that's both the roads but also the network infrastructure. So that's the sit-rep, the slide of actually where things are at the moment in terms of the roading, and again I won't go into the details about that in Canterbury. In terms of Christchurch, the rainfall here as it started to prepare was significant because of the awareness of that it was going to be accompanied by 4 significant king tide events. And that, as you're well aware, makes the impact of the rain much larger as tides coming in and water flowing out. So that's why the team started to prepare so well in advance. In the city, we actually got lower intensity of rain than many of the other territorial authorities, and also for what the team had potentially planned for as a precautionary approach, although Banks Peninsula did experience large rainfall. You'll know what happened during the event. There was some flooding in low reaches of the river and other tidal areas. Several roads were closed, but we were fortunate that while there was flooding on properties and inside some garages, we have no reports of flooding above floor level in Christchurch. So I'll now hand over to Tim, who led the preparedness, planning and response.
Thanks, Mary. Just to point out that we do keep an eye on the weather pretty closely. So this event wasn't a big surprise for us. We found out around Monday the 24th that there was something brewing. And on Wednesday the 26th, we pulled together the teams and kicked off our response processes. And the preparations that we undertook over the coming couple of days was grill clearing, pump deployments in key locations, outfall excavations, so that's out at Sumner, New Brighton, around the estuary, Started prepping some communications to the public, coordination of other council teams, so transport, civil defence, comms, preparing our contractors and talking to them to make sure they've got enough resources both here in Banks Peninsula, and looked at our water supply and wastewater preparedness as well, which included shutting down some of our wells, some of the lower ones, and also clearing a lot of the ponds out at the wastewater treatment plant, including emptying one of them completely.
So you've covered that one, haven't
Yep, we've done that one too. Oh, and finally we also checked off, or checked levels of Lake Forsyth, Waiera as well, to make sure that wasn't going to cause any problems.
Thanks, Tim. Mark Pinner, City Streets Maintenance Manager. I think the response generally across the team worked really well, and I guess that's just in part because we've been tried and tested a few times before, but in terms of communication, we were very clear in terms of our preparation at what times we would get reports and information through, and then obviously message that through to the public. We did obviously have a huge number of incidents, and obviously the customer call centre were part of obviously the team that we engaged with, and for our part basically wanted to make sure that they had the tools to help us in terms of prioritising all of the events that we needed to respond to, and they did really well with that. They did call when they needed to, and otherwise they put the tickets through so we could manage them amongst the others when we could get to them. The contractors did play their part, and they having given them as much notice as we could, particularly around a weekend, they were able to move their shifts around and obviously make sure that they could work through the night where they needed to as well, and they did that, and I don't think we had any issues at all on the supply side there. In the end, we probably got up to about 21 roads that were actually closed, around about another 40 that actually had flooding signs across them. We did, for our part, consciously believe that actually if we close a road, even though there would be some retreat of the floodwaters, we're better to keep it closed just in terms of the messaging and for the network use, so that actually customer would know what they could actually deal with and how they could get around. But we were very conscious coming into the Monday morning that obviously people would be trying to get back to work, and then obviously want to make sure that that was clear and consistent as well. In terms of the Free Waters team, they used their retention bases to full effect and basically waited till the worst had passed, and then have slowly been releasing that water on the outgoing tides. They did release water from Lake Forsyth as well, which also then helped across the region to help drain across Little River and those outlying areas, so that State Highway could be opened up again Tuesday afternoon. I guess the key messages to staff and community were hopefully effective and timely. And I think just, some of the examples we saw in terms of sort of the latter stage of the event where it was clear that other councils are involved, certainly across the region. We had a great deployment of our resources to help in small cases out there as well.
Rob Orchard, Head of Civil Defence. From a CDM perspective, we activated a combined response team from RT 10, 11 and 14. Their job was to conduct reconnaissance and confidence patrols in the historically affected areas, and that was across Sunday and Monday. They also carried out checks on 40 properties that were identified by the Three Waters team. After those checks, some people chose to self-evacuate. We've also deployed a team to check on the community at Port Levy after concerns were raised about the bridge from Ngaitahu. Those checks went well, and also the Park Rangers team were involved in those checks. You've currently got a team of 12 NZRT members deployed to Ashburton with 4 vehicles to assist in that area, and you've also got council staff assisting in the EOC, and my CDM team are continuing to support the ECC at the Justice Precinct.
That's just a picture. So Helen is just going to give a quick overview of the resilience of the network.
So as is aware, the infrastructure across the city did design as functioned, and that investment in land drainage and floodplain management in the Flockton area along Dudley Creek and in the Upper Heathcote has proved to be extraordinarily useful. And not only is the investment important, but the operation of that infrastructure and those basins between council teams and city care also went very well indeed. So that operational coordination is essential in an event like this, as you watch where the rain is falling and which rivers are rising. It's worth noting that those Upper Heathcote basins held some 700,000 cubic metres back from the Heathcote River, and that protected the mid part of the Heathcote from the flooding that it's seen in the past. Once all of those basins are operational, we'll have some 2 million cubic metres capacity up there, so there's more there. And we do, of course, give thanks to the old catchment board for building those stop banks along the Waimakariri, because most of the rain was inland and would have been coming down that Waimakariri River, and otherwise it would have come through the city as it has in the past. We should also note there's a few things that did not go wrong and nobody noticed. So one is all of those wellheads that were raised across the city and are now not subject to surface flooding and contamination. So that's an investment in risk management and risk mitigation. And similarly, the investment in our in avoiding sewage overflows. So we did have around 18 minor overflows, but no major overflows and no failures at our terminal pump stations and no failures at the wastewater treatment plant despite those volumes. So, you know, it's just good to note the things that didn't go wrong as well. Thank you.
Just flick through these. You have in your slides some sort of aerial photos of what happened. And I'll flick through those quickly. So we just wanted to then just identify, and these will come out more in the report, just summarise, you know, what were the critical factors of success for us in terms of what went well. And so the teams touched on that. It was that early warning, so the fact that we have warning and monitoring systems in place and actually take note of them and start planning early. The fact that we had preparation and we have actually policies and processes in place for what clicks in, and we follow those plans and did that early in this event. That it was a coordinated response, so that was across council and the contractors, so everybody was prepared, pre-warned and had the right rosters on. Good interagency collaboration. We have a very strong relationship with the police, who would ring in each day just to check whether we need any support, and you know, at one stage we did, with them just doing some patrols and monitoring around some of the pumps. Good TA collaboration, and this was a good opportunity for Christchurch to support the other TAs who have supported us so many times before, and particularly during those during the earthquakes. You know, we do have to acknowledge those CDM response teams that Rob's talked on. These are volunteers. So they volunteer their time and they're out there in the wet and the dark and constantly enthusiastic. You would have seen in the one of the pictures up there, the mayor was out there. I think they even supplied her with gummies, so she could get out with the response team on Sunday. You know, amazing, and working night, day, and after Banks Peninsula, and etc. The other critical factor of success, as Helen's touched on, is all that investment that's been put in, and particularly in the last 5-6 years by the council into their infrastructure. And, you know, tested in this event and will be tested in others and functioned as planned. Communications, you know, really have to sing out to Di and her team, always in day and night in events, making sure there's good communication out to our communities and also internally to our staff. Call centre triaging a huge amounts of calls, had extra people rostered on for night and called in more to do that, and made sure as Mark said, the things were going out to the contractors and to the staff to prepare in a very organised and could be triaged and prioritised. Good political support. We had the mayor there having to call state of emergencies out supporting, and we really appreciate the support from the councillors and encouragement during the weekend. So, support that we got, and the fact that we weren't barraged with a whole lot of requests. You relied on the systems to work for us, and just gave encouragement. So that, that's great. The other critical factors of success that the team were talking about this morning is we have far too much experience at this now. So, managing sort of events seems to be sort of, what we do all the time now. And the other critical factors of success from this is actually we learned how the network works, and we'll actually be able to future investment make sure it clicks in and work it. So that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for putting that together at such short notice, and something that I didn't know at the beginning of the presentation that I know now was the wellhead story, and of course it's kind of obvious, but it's just another feature of the investment story that is making our city more resilient. So thank you very much for all of you and the different parts that you play. Thank you for your presentation this morning, and for your work you do. Yeah. So the next item on the agenda